Hi, everybody. I'm going to shout out Judy one more time. That's amazing. Can we give her one more round of applause? Now that's enough. No more, I promise. I get it. Well, I've met with a couple people in this room. This is just a side anecdote off of that. And when I got asked to speak, I'm like, what am I to speak to all these people? You guys are like the real outdoors people. Like I get to play because of you guys, which is really cool. A lot of you, anyway. And people like the person I was mentioning before that I can't mention again, Judy. This trip is about the Ice Age Trail, but I've been able to travel on the Spear Hiking Trail. I've been able to travel on the Kekakabik Trail and the Border Route Trail. I've been able to ski across the Boundary Waters. And then I move out to Alaska in the winter, and even those trails out there, they're maintained by just the normal people like us who live there. All of these things I'm going to talk about, they don't just appear out of nowhere. And you all, I know I'm preaching to the choir, you all know this, but this is just a thank you from me to all of you who actively or inactively or just speak up to keep trails and everything else open. Without all of you, I wouldn't be able to get to have fun outside. I would have to do all the work. I wouldn't be able to be so lazy and just hike them, right? But anyway. I call this the longest way because it's about the Ice Age Trail, which is one of 11 national scenic trails in the United States. And I call it the longest way because it is, I think, the longest way possible that you could take to get across Wisconsin. I thought that this was a good idea, and then I started hiking it, and I thought it was a dumb idea. I kind of looked at the map, but I didn't realize that. So I started out on the west side and made my way east. And when you do that, you go down, and then you go over, and then you come back up, and you just went down not too long ago. Then you have to make a decision right here of what kind of person you're going to be. And I will tell you that they will judge you. The Ice Age Trail Association will judge you based upon if you choose west or east at the bifurcation. This is literally a debate, an ongoing debate in a picture form. Where did the glacier go? Right? Who's to say? I wasn't there. And then you start going up, and then you go back east, even though you just came from the east, and then you go west, and then you're going south again for some reason, even though you're about to go north again. And then you finally start to head west and squiggle across the top, and then go back south to make it to Interstate State Park, which is a beautiful state park that we share with Wisconsin if you've never been there. And this whole thing that I'm going to talk to you about, so this is 8 things I learned through 1,200 miles, but it's really like 11 or 12 or 13 things I learned. I just noted 8 of them. And one of the things that people always ask me is, how do you get started doing something like this? Right? So I feel like this is a room full of people that have dreams, desires, and ideas, right? For the places that you live in or places that you've visited or places you've experienced or whatnot. And the way I got started, I was born, and I happened to be born to what would become a single parent, and my mom is awesome. But she was busy, right? Because she was trying to keep a roof over our heads. So you cue my grandparents, who had a farm in northern Minnesota. So then they just threw me outside, and they're like, well, good luck. Because, they were born in the 1930s. They're like, we had it hard. Good luck to you. Here's a dog. I hope it's fun, right? And so that's really how I got started. And without my grandparents, I don't know if I would have appreciated the outdoors, right? We raised a lot of our own food. My grandpa grew poplar trees for paper pulp back in the day when it was like the cool thing to do. So I learned a lot about tent caterpillars when I was way too young. Squished a lot of them between my fingers. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with laying out in the snow under the pines and just watching the wind go through them, right? Maybe some of you have done this. You can hear it, right? Then I got older, and I started to get different ideas. I had hiked the Superior Hiking Trail. I'd moved to Duluth after college, really for kicks and giggles, because I didn't want to move back to my mom's house. And I had learned how to sleep in a tent, really, because of my geology degree. Geologists have the I think we have one of the best degrees because your field trips are actually field trips. You get to go out into the field, but the university does not want to pay for a hotel for you, so they throw you into a tent. They're like, good luck. You're like, yeah, you sound like a lot like my grandparents. And I moved here, and I was like, there's this cool thing called the Superior Hiking Trail. And I was like, man, 300 miles, that's pretty long. I don't know if I can do that. Well, I saved up all my pennies and bought a Deuter backpack. I wanted to be an Osprey girl. Because Ospreys look really cool, right? And like back in the day, they had that really cool like sleek design where like the mesh in the back so you wouldn't sweat so much. It just didn't fit my body, so I had to go with the Cadillac Deuter, which, and now I wear Granite gear, but the Deuter, high praise to them. And I shoved everything from my house in there because I didn't know how to backpack. I had like glass jars. I had like actual spice jars from my cabinet. I had like an actual pot because I didn't have anything, right? And I did it, and it was hard, and I loved it. And I was like, this is just in my backyard. This is super cool. So I kept hiking more and more miles, finally did the whole thing with my dog. And then I was like, I want to become a 1,000-miler, right? For thru-hikers, that's a big deal. It's like your first like little taste into the world of you can live outside and move your own body for days and days. And so I was out with this person called Shauna Weaver. Some of you may know her. She's a runner in Duluth, also has written a book called Climate Grief. It just came out. And I was like, we were sitting playing bar league volleyball. I'm like, I want to be a 1,000-miler. And she's like, well, there's this glacier trail in Wisconsin. And I was like, I have no idea what that is. I like scrolled on my phone and I was like, all right, next winter I'm going to hike that thing no matter what it takes. The big question, people are like, why do you do it in the winter? Well, because that's the time I have. I'm the head gardener at Glen Sheen, tourist trap down the road. And I get laid off for 3 months out of the year. And I used to work. And then I realized I need a better work-life balance. So I started to adventure. And so I did. This is what I learned. And this is what you've learned. Have a plan. I had never planned anything like this before in my life. I am type B, so type B. Hansi knows this because he had to harass me so many times just to send like a W-9 to him. And I'm like, he's like, do you want money? I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, well, send this to me. I'm like, okay. He's like, do you want to get paid? I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, well, I need this thing from you. I'm like, yeah, I know. And then he'd be like, okay. So I'm extremely type B, but for this, I was so prepared. I had spreadsheets upon spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. And I was proud of myself. And because of these spreadsheets, I was able to have all my gear planned. I had 7 people resupply me along the way. I have some of the best friends. I made them drive to the endless reaches of Wisconsin to come give me my stuff. It was awesome. And I had so much stuff. So this is my backpack. Glenn Beulah. She's a big girl. It turned out to be a 70-liter. It was like Granite Gear's, one of Granite Gear's like last large backpacks. They're like, you can try this. I was like, great. And then my dog, I didn't carry her. You'll get to meet her, not her actually here, but I'll introduce her in a second. And I had all of this stuff that I had, but I'd run out of money. So this is this beautiful tent here. It was donated to me by Louise Levy. Some of you may know her. It's a 1989 Sierra Designs clip flashlight, 3-season tent. If you notice, I hike in the 4th season. And I had this huge plan, right? But I ran out of money. And she's like, well, I have this tent that Morris uses. And I'm like, well, it's better than sleeping on the snow naked, right? I built this sled thing, monster, down in the corner you can see here. I had this whole thing planned out, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to be able to flip it over and be able to pull it on the road. There's 500 miles of road walking on the Ice Age Trail. They're remedying that. You all know land, hard to acquire. And I was like, so I can pull it on the snow and it'll slide, and I can flip it over and I can pull it on the road and it'll wheel. Well, I didn't have money for lightweight materials, so I'm using steel and 2x4s, and I'm like, oh, I can totally pull this in the snow. It was the worst thing of my life. I hated it. And I got rid of it after the first week. So what this meant is that I had to figure out how to put all the stuff I was carrying on a sled, all the stuff that I had in my backpack, and keep it in my backpack. It turned to be 60 or 65 pounds, and I just decided to carry that all the way through Wisconsin. right? I did give Diggins some of it also. Number 2, I learned, is take somebody with you on this journey. You have this huge idea, right? And you can't get it out of your head. You have to tell somebody about it. And you don't want to do it alone, right? So for me, right, I do a lot of trips solo. It does take a whole host of people to get any of my trips off the ground. I could not do it without so many people. You just don't get to see them when I throw pictures on Instagram, right? But the buddy I decided to take was an Alaskan Husky. She doesn't have very many good ideas. But she's a good sounding board because she doesn't talk back. We've all been to those meetings, right? I acquired Diggins in a way that I would encourage you to just magically let things find you. I had a dog at the time, I still do. He's called Zulu. He's a Catahoula leopard dog, which means he is made for the summer purely. They're bred in the South to hunt wild boar, so they're short-haired. He's very cute, very attractive. He's very loyal, but he has more clothes than I do for the wintertime. And to force him to sleep outdoors with me for 2.5 months seemed a little bit cruel. And my partner at the time also did not want to be home alone. So I planned on going by myself. A buddy of mine saw my Facebook post, like, I'm going to take this trip. She's like, are you taking a dog with you? She's a guide up at Wintergreen Dog Sled Lodge. And I was like, no, but do you have a dog I could borrow? She's like, no, but you can post to this mushers site on Facebook. And I was like, okay. So it was like a weird, like, dating application, right? Hey, I'm Emily Ford. Single, without dog. Looking for a dog that can withstand cold temperatures, that I can borrow for free, because I have no money anymore, for 2.5 months in Wisconsin, and it was crickets. Because who wants to let you borrow their dog, right? My buddies commented on my post so it would stay at the top. I was super thankful for them, right? All these people in the woodwork that you just don't see. And one person said yes. Her name is Sherry Beatty, of Beatty Family Farms out of Lakeville, Minnesota, of all places, right? Think of all the mushers we have up here in northern Minnesota that are on this mushers website, and is the person from the cities who's like, yeah, I have this, at the time, 3-year-old Alaskan Husky. They had just got her because she came with puppies, so she was pregnant, so they could have her bloodline in their kennel. And it was the height of COVID, and they didn't know if Bear Grease was gonna go. And so I got to have this girl. Remember that I borrowed her, okay? Don't get emotionally attached. Don't do what I did. Don't get emotionally attached to her. She's very cute, right? I mean, look at her. Look at her little ears. I love this photo of Tarzan and Jane because this was literally Diggins when I first met her. Because sled dogs, right, live in a dog yard. They don't really see the rest of the world unless they're racing. And if they're racing, like, it looks like just a trail. And she thought everything was the coolest. You guys have seen the movie Elf? Maybe, perhaps. And like when Buddy the Elf first experiences the city, he's like taking gum off the sidewalk and like eating. He's like, this is amazing. Right? He's like, wow, look at this elevator, this escalator. We were walking through the streets and she's just walking along and she just shoves her paw into a drain grate. And she looks at me like it was my fault. And I'm like, you're supposed to naturally know that somehow, little wolf. She's like, how dare you not tell me about these soul-sucking holes in the ground that I stuck my paw into. But don't get attached. There are these roadblocks that you'll find along the way when you have these great ideas, right? And I hit a lot of roadblocks. Some were little roadblocks. There's a lot of trail maintenance that's happening, that's been paused and started and stopped and started on the Ice Age Trail due to land issues, land rights, rerouting. This specific one, there was a tunnel that was collapsing that it went through. So making the intentional decision to go and finding a different way around this roadblock. Other roadblocks really made by myself is that it was really cold because it's Wisconsin. And I thought, double check the fine print, even if it's not fine, I thought that I had bought a minus 30-degree sleeping bag from Western Mountaineering. I was super stoked. I was in the airport. I had just gotten done doing a photo shoot for Duluth Trading, so I had a little bit extra funding, which was awesome. I'm on the Western Mountaineering website. I'm like, that is a sleeping bag for me, minus 30. Awesome. Bought it, right then and there, came to my house. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I felt great at minus 23. I had, there's different ways to stay warm, right? Heat up your hot water bottle, or throw it in your sleeping bag, wear extra layers, dry yourself out, right? Don't wear the stuff you hiked in your sleeping bag. It wasn't until later, when I started planning my trip for the Boundary Waters, that I went on Western Mountaineering's website to just take a perusal at their sleeping bags again. I realized I bought their 0-degree sleeping bag, not their minus 30-degree sleeping bag. But I had no idea. Sometimes it's just a mind over matter situation, right? But because of the cold weather, I mostly looked like this. My tent mostly looked like this. And then I ended up looking like this. And what happened was that my quad was pulling on my patella, and it was shifting it off to the side. So it was just, everything was off track. Has anybody in here have ever had knee issues? Yeah, right. Yes. I had never had knee issues before. And we were just hiking along, and it started hurting so unbelievably bad. People were meeting me on the trail. This is the thing about the Ice Age Trail, is people come out of the woodwork to show up for you. The Ice Age Trail Association and their trail angels are like gaga for the Ice Age Trail. So all these people would be coming out, and they'd be like, do you need help? And I'd be like, oh, no. Doing the Minnesota thing. I'm fine. No, I'm okay. And I'm like literally hobbling like, I'm doing great. This is the best trip of my life. It was terrible. And finally, I ended up on this backcountry county road, and I sat down, and Diggins curled up in my knees. I put my hood over my head, and I just stuck my thumb out. I was just hoping for anybody to come find me. Right? And these are the serendipitous moments where you feel like you're in total peril, and you just need someone to come lift you up and move you on to the next thing. And there was. Ironically, this family was called the Winter family. It was the dad's birthday, and they're like, do you need help? And they ended up shuttling me to my campsite for the night. Oh. Hold tight. I clicked off my screen. Oh, no. Pause. Nice. Number 3, you're going to see a trend here in just a little bit, is that lean on the people around you. You have this great idea, you're hitting your roadblocks, all of these things are coming along, but there's this trail that you want to experience and accomplish. And what I learned on this is that a little kindness goes a long way. Right? So we talk about this, especially as being a person of color on the trail. People are like, how can I help you along? And it doesn't always take much to help somebody see their goal come through. And for me, it showed up in this way, that I'd be hiking along the trail, and there would literally be signs saying, you are the best Emily. Now, I want you all to close your eyes. Imagine you're driving down I-35 or whatever interstate you have with your eyes open, right? And think if there was a billboard with your name on it that was like, Stacy, you're the coolest, and whatever you're doing a good job at. Sometimes it's all you ever want to hear, or somebody wants to hear, that you are doing a good job and what you're doing is worth doing. And that's what happened. And because of that, Diggins and I got to experience some of the most beautiful parts of Wisconsin that people don't even know about. I think when a lot of people from not the Midwest and the Midwest think about Wisconsin, they think about cows and cattle and milk, which are all the same thing. But we got to experience these sweet little nooks and crannies and places together. Don't get attached. Back to the top, everybody. Don't get attached. She's volunteering for this role, okay? But because of this, we got to experience some of the most wild and beautiful places. If you want a nice solitude place to go to in Wisconsin, check out the Chequamegon Forest. Everybody, spell Chequamegon with me. See, there it is. No. That's as far as I get also. The Chequamegon Forest does start with a C and an H, if you're ever going to look it up on Google. The fourth thing that I learned after all these roadblocks is that it's difficult, but not impossible. Whatever you're working towards right now, the slog that we're all in, the slog that I was in, it felt difficult. There'd be some days that, because I did this to myself, I ditched my snowshoes when I ditched my sled. Snow, who needs snowshoes to hike through the snow? Not this guy. I would end up in butt-deep snow just post-holing it with a 60-pound backpack on with this dog that didn't want to be with me, that wasn't even mine at the time, right? And it was painfully slow. When you think you're going to hike 20 miles a day and you end up only hiking 10, that puts a ding in your morale. And as we're going along, though, right, there are these people who are pumping me up, like, Emily, you're the best. Look at this beautiful sign here. If you believe in yourself, anything is possible. You are unstoppable. We believe in you. Go, Emily. Yeah, boy. But there's this one fourth grader that has parents that really must give him a reality check every morning. I don't know if you can read that, but don't worry. I'll blow it up for you. This is what this fourth grader said to me. Push yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you. You're like, isn't that the reality? Like, you're 10. This kid for president in 2070 when you're of age. But that was the reality, right? There was just some things I just had to push through in what it looked like, right? Maybe if you've ever scrolled to my Instagram, you're like, oh, the beautiful photos, look at the cute dogs, the boundary waters, amazing. On the back end of it, I know all of you who work in any type of admin is literally just like one little shuffle in front of the other, and you're like, this is the sexy part. The shuffle, the pushing myself. But because of that, right, I got to experience these crazy, beautiful, snowy places right next door in Wisconsin. Even the roadwalks turned out to be beautiful. Even the cities turned out to be beautiful. This is just right in Baraboo, Wisconsin. And I was like, I might move here. I won't move, no. And of course, because of that too, we got to become really good friends. Again, the theme continues, keep leaning into community, because really, honestly, with these kids showing up, it was a way that I could be propelled forward. But we also got to meet people who came out of the woodwork, right? People you don't even think could be on your agenda. All of a sudden, they arise out of the snow like it's, frozen, and like the snow is becoming Olaf, and you're like, you're my best friend. This person here happened to be a musher and became Diggins' best friend pretty quick, because in that bucket is straight up raw meat. And Diggins is like, this chump over here only feeds me kibble. What you got is what I want. Lee over here, he became a good buddy of mine. He was a sweet, sweet old man who left me a note on the trail, a little handwritten note. He's like, hey, I know this seems creepy. I'm not creepy though. My kids think I'm awesome. Check. I really just want to feed you as much food as possible. And I have a shower and I have a bed if you would want to stop in. It's warm, it's dry, you can dry out your stuff. Your dog can come with you. Check. I don't text. This is how I knew it was okay. He said, I don't text because I'm too old. You have to call me. And I was like, this is good. So I called him and I said, where are you located? This would be awesome. And he happened to be a line cook. It made me as much food as I could possibly eat. I ate so much bacon the next morning. I was a little slow hiking. I regretted it after I got to the top of the hill I was climbing. That's super awesome. He comes to Duluth and pops in and says hello to me at Glen Sheen. I really appreciate it. Some of these friendships I've gotten out of this are pretty great. This person, one of the most meaningful people to me, she's the president of the Ice Age Trail Association, and this is Patty Dreyer. And you can see my glasses there. The glasses are on my face. But it was a blizzarding day, and the snow was blowing across the road, and it was beautiful. But my goggles I had at the time, they said they were over the glasses goggles. Lies. They were the worst. So I would take off my glasses, and for reasons of unknown, I would stick them on my chest strap. Right. Dumb. And I thought that was a good idea. But Diggins looked so cool, walking in the snow, blowing her fur and her little pointy ears, so cute. I had to take a picture of it. And inside my jacket was my phone, so I undo my chest strap, grab my phone out, get the little video of her, and I stick everything back together, and I keep on hiking. 2 hours later, I realize I have no glasses. I had met Patty the day before, and she loves the Ice Age Trail. She loves anybody who wants to hike it. She's extremely passionate about it. And I called her up the next day. I said, "Hey, Patty, I lost my glasses on this county road. Is there any way that you can go look for them? My glasses literally look like the earth. They're brown, clear, green, and black, right? Not only that, but Wisconsin is very good at plowing. We may be able to learn something from Wisconsin." They not only plow their roads, but they plow their ditches, and it was a ditch plowing day. And she's like, "Sure, I'll go look for it." I keep hiking for a couple more hours, and my glasses are toast. At the same time, I'd also lost my mittens. Why? It was a rough day for Emily, I'm not gonna lie. But 2 hours later, she drives up next to me, she says, "Are these your glasses?" I was like, oh my God. She didn't find them, but she was looking on the road, and someone else came to help her. This is like third level helping, right? Some dude pulled over and was like, "Do you need help?" She's like, "I'm looking for glasses." And he happened to find them. Mind-blowing trail magic, right? One of the last people I want to tell you about that I met is called Tara Gundrum. She's awesome. She's a Marine, and she's a badass. She is a cyclist, and I think now she's a triathlete also. She is unbelievably cool. I love her to bits and pieces. She is the only other black person I met on the trail. She's the only other black woman that I met on the trail with her dog. And she's one of if I count James, 3 people of color that I met on the trail for 1,200 miles, right? We talked for a little bit, but she had to go and I had to go. But we ended up meeting up again, and she hiked 18 miles with me a different day, a week later, and she actually slept out with me that night too. She wanted to experience what it was like to sleep out in the cold, and I'm forever thankful for Tara. She's extremely awesome. Right, okay, so I said the whole push yourself thing because no one else is going to do it for you, right? There's that, but there also has to be a mix of rest in that, or else we all burn out, right? We want to be a hero, but we're all just human. Or are we dancers? It's rough, sorry. I got to meet these people who allowed me to stay at their place for multiple days in a row, right? It was the height of COVID, so trail angels were really cool. They left me a lot of food, but staying inside people's houses was kind of a no-no for quite a few people, right? Because COVID, we had no idea what it was doing and what it was like. But these people happened to have an outbuilding. They let me stay in it for several days during a huge, huge cold blizzard, and they shuttled me back and forth between the trail. Because of that, we got to really experience some good rest in a really good 0 day. And this came out because I didn't want to rest. If you were me and you were planning a 1,200-mile trip, how many 0 days would you give yourself? Just think of a number. 1, 10 maybe? 20? I gave myself 5. 5 small rest days. And I wasn't ready to take one, but my knees still hurt. And we're hiking along, and Diggins decides to dive after something in the ditch, and my knee kind of twists. And I threw the most childish fit on a backcountry road in Wisconsin. I took my trekking poles, and I go, "Diggins, I can't do this anymore!" And she looks at me, she's like, "Oh my God." She's like, "I wish I was pulling a sled instead of pulling you around." And it was this moment of just okay, I need a break, I need a rest. This trip, I want to finish it, but without resting, it's never gonna get done. Also, we were able to rest and along the trail because people kept leaving food out for us. Diggins got probably more food than I did, because apparently a dog is way more interesting to keep alive than a human. But it was awesome, right? Because she got to have more calories, I got to have more calories, and it was perfect. I think one of the most important things that we can remember, that I can remember when I have these huge, big ideas, right? That emotions are real, right? And people are beings with emotions. And don't forget that when you're working around with folks. And for me, this really came out at the end, right? We cannot get attached to this dog, but I did. I did. I didn't mean to, but I did. She became my best friend in the entire world, right? We'd experienced everything, so much so that she started biting people who would come towards me. She was like, it's just me and this guy back here. I'm gonna bite you. And then I had to leave her, right? So this is Sherry here, and this is when I had made it to Interstate State Park, and I'm chit-chatting with some friends over here and having a good time. Diggins is sitting by my side, and Sherry comes over and she goes, I think it's time for Diggins to go home now. And I'm just like, yeah, of course. And days before this, I had rehearsed what I was gonna tell Diggins, and it all went straight to the can. I'm not much of a crier, especially in public, but this was the moment where I was like, I need to show this dog that she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I bawled like a baby, and I didn't care. The camera was rolling, I didn't care. There were people around, I didn't care. This was my best friend leaving me. And the tough part about this is that she left. I went home, took a shower, cried in the shower until the water turned cold. And then the depression just punched me straight in the face. What people don't know about trips like this is that you go on these really cool trips. They're awesome, right? The photos, the stories, the harrowing moments, right? And then you get home and then you're alone with only the memory of your trip in your head. I don't know if any of you have experienced this after even accomplishing just like a big thing in your life. We call this a very big thing, right? It's from the book Bravey. I was warned about this, and I was like, I'll be fine. I'm Emily Ford. Stone, hard, cold. I'm German. We don't have emotions. I come from people who were enslaved. I'm strong. I don't have to show fear. I'm Polish, more stoic than the Germans. I'm Welsh. Nobody will know that I have any emotions. And in this moment, and getting hit with what people call the post-hike blues, I became just straight up a human. I hated everything. I hated my truck, which I love my truck. Reba. She's my girl. I didn't want to bike anywhere. I didn't want to drive anywhere. I didn't want to leave my house. I didn't even like foods I loved before. Right? My partner at the time was like, we got to get this dog back. So we did. I borrowed Diggins for one last trip, thinking this would be like, okay, I need closure from this. I need just one last trip to like satiate, this little hunger of mine to be on an adventure. It turned out that Diggins got along really well with my other dog, Zulu, and got along with my partner really well. Also, so I called up Sherry, or I texted her, and I said, hey, I will pay anything for this dog. Sled dogs, if you don't know, can be very expensive. They are bred for their feet, for their fur, for their speed, for their longevity. And if you get a good dog with a good bloodline and they do big races, they can be worth anywhere up to $5,000. You all know I had no money. I couldn't even afford a 4-season tent, let alone an Alaskan Husky. And I was like, I will take out a loan for this dog. Sherry's like, I have to check with my kiddo, because her kiddo is the one who Diggins belongs to. Actually, both for twins, they race. And she texts me back later and she says, we feel like you and Diggins have such a bond that we want to give her to you for free. And that is the best gift anybody has given me in a long time, right? Diggins is not here in Duluth with me now. She's up in Alaska with my current partner, getting ready to run Iditarod. If you don't know what that is, it's an 1,100-mile dog sled race from Anchorage to Nome. So she's out doing other things. I'll be up with her in a little bit. But our life together has been amazing. Finally, when you're doing all these things, remember your impact. Even if you don't see what your impact is, this is extremely important. Who do you think? There's only one right answer for this question, so don't get it wrong. Who do you think my one polar icon person of color is? I will take a shout-out answer for this, and I will Give anybody a high five if they get this answer right. A historic figure. Who said that? Yes, my man. Excellent. This is the first talk I've given that anybody has ever known who Matthew Henson is. I have given in upwards of maybe 50 to 70 talks. This is going to be a weird aside, but this is extremely important. If there's anything that you get out of today, it is who Matthew Henson is and who he is to me. I get one icon of polar explorers. Winter is the thing I had to fall in love with, and I fell in love with it. But there are not people of color in the winter very much. Now there are more than there used to be, right? But in the 1900s, it was this guy. He died in 1955, so I never got to meet him. When he was really young, he had a dream. He had a big idea that there was a better world out there. He wanted to be a pirate. He wanted to work on a ship. He had read books about being on the seven seas and this beautiful life of what it looks like to be on a ship. And his mom's like, there are some racist people out there who are going to beat you. And he's like, I don't care. I want to achieve this dream. And he did. At 13, he left home with no shoes and walked down the road until he found someone to take him in on a ship. That dude who took him in on a ship taught him to read, taught him to write, taught him to sail, taught him to navigate, taught him how to fix the ship, taught him everything he needed to know. Later on in his life, he was working at a shop selling hats. People knew that he wanted to be an adventurer. And a guy named Robert Perry walks in, this tall white dude, and he's like, I'm going to be the first person to the North Pole. I don't know what he sounded like, but that's what I imagine. Robert Perry was part of the military, and he's like, I'm going to America, we're going to be the first at the North Pole if I should lose all my toes to do it. And he did. He's like, but I need somebody to come along with me. Matthew Henson was the one that for some reason he chose. And for years, they attempted the North Pole over and over again. And this is not 2023 attempts to the North Pole. This is where merino wool did not exist back then. Let us remember, okay? All this Gore-Tex did not exist. You know what did exist? Sealskin, polar bear fur, all these things. And they were hard treks to the North Pole. And who stuck by Robert Perry was Matthew Henson the whole time. The way you do these expeditions is that you have a dog sled, and instead of the dogs being in a line like this, like we see now with our races, the way that most indigenous places also, they still run like this, is that your dogs are fanned out. So it's a really powerful sled. But in front of these dogs, you need to have someone trudging ahead, breaking trail, right? That's usually a human, and that was Matthew Henson. He knew how to drive a sled. He knew how to fix a sled. He knew everything. He was the best navigator that was going to get anybody to the North Pole. And he did, 1908. Matthew Henson was on their final march with three Inuits, and they were waiting for the rest of the gang to catch up. And Matthew says to Perry, he says, I think we're at the North Pole. And Perry's like, no, it's not possible, because I'm going to be the first person at the North Pole. And they like use those crazy devices to like look at the sun and the horizon and all this stuff. And he's like, shit, we're at the North Pole. So Matthew Henson is the first person that we think was at the North Pole, right? They didn't have GPS then, so they were probably pretty close. They get back, and nobody believes that a black man could have even experienced the cold, let alone be the first person at the North Pole. And he gets swept under the rug. It wasn't until 2000 that finally Nat Geo recognized him as the first person at the North Pole. This dude was born in 1866. Right? It's a long time for a legacy to be recognized. But this is the one dude I get to attach myself to. Right? In his book, there's a book called Dark Companion. And he's like, I'm doing this for myself, but for my race, but I don't think anybody will notice. And if I could tell him, I would say, I noticed. And this is an extremely important part, right? This is a part of my story. And this is why I keep going outside, right? Because there's its impact that I get to make on people. And I think because it's worth it, because I get to hang out with kids like this, and if there's anything that would be more awesome to me than anything, is that a little kid sees me, especially a little kid of color, would see me in the outdoors, right, on these trails that you guys have been building, that you guys get to experience also, and they're like, that seems pretty cool. So then now we have the trails, and we have the snow full of people of color, and people that just look different bodies, different abilities, different colors, different backgrounds. And just remember that your impact also, because you are also worth it, right? There's this quote by this guy, if you've ever heard of him, Gandhi. He's all right. He wasn't always all right, but he's okay for now. He's good enough for this quote. But this is really important to me. It says, whatever you do in your life will be insignificant, but it's very important that you do it, because you can't know. You can't ever really know the meaning of your life, and you don't need to. Every life has a meaning, whether it lasts for 100 years, 100 seconds. Every life, every death changes the world in its own way, and you can't know. So don't take it for granted, but don't take it too seriously. Don't postpone what you want. Don't leave anything misunderstood. Make sure the people you care about know. Make sure they know how you really feel. Because just like that, it could end. So yes, this is a story about the Ice Age Trail and how I spent 2.5 months outside in the freezing cold winter of Wisconsin, blah, blah, blah. Great. But the story, and our story here as a collective, is so much bigger than these trips that I get to go on. So I hope that you guys feel encouraged to continue on with what your huge dreams and ideas are, right? So thank you so much.